Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob. I'm a food fan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at foodfan.com.
And this is episode 51. We've got some exciting news coming up for you.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. Now, some of these topics, Jacob, this time in the show notes, you were very cryptic in these topics. So I actually have no idea
Right.
what's gonna come at me. So a lot of this is also gonna be like my reactions to a lot of this exciting stuff that you've brought up. So
Sure.
let's dive right into that.
So last year, I think it was back in August, we covered this story where Kaweco had trademarked the names Moonman and D-Like and Wingsung, and those being, of course, names of well-known Chinese pen brands. And then we found, I think maybe it was on Reddit, there was someone had supposedly gotten what looked like a statement from Kaweco. It was never verified it was a real statement from Kaweco, but it was a statement that explained that they did this to fight back against the copycats, basically. Right? That was the gist of it. And we discussed that at length. I think that was a pretty interesting episode. And we said that we kind of get where they're coming from with D-Like and Wingsung, because both of those brands have pens that look a lot like Kaweco Sports. Now, we argue that there are questions about whether copyright is enforceable, and we argue that the D-Like can be seen as an improvement on the design. But at least we understand what they mean when they talk about lookalikes, because those pens are lookalikes. But with the Moonman, that was more cryptic. We didn't really understand what's going on. I think that statement mentioned Moonman T1, and we argued that the Moonman T1 is definitely not a copycat. And we argued, we spent like 20 minutes talking about the reasons why, right?
Yep.
But that was the end of it for a while. But then, like 2 weeks ago, and there was this interesting post on the Pen Addict. I think it was All the Hobbies. Kimberly wrote a post comparing Kaweco's Perkio to a pen by a quote-unquote Western pen maker. And that particular pen looked a lot like a Kaweco Perkio. Much more than any Moonman pen looked like a Kaweco pen. And that's made me think about this whole story again. Like, how can this be okay? Why is Kaweco concerned about Moonman and not this, basically? That's what I was wondering. So I thought this time, let me try to get an answer from Kaweco directly.
And the pen that you're talking about is the Ferris wheel press. I don't really know what the name of the model is, but that's the pen we're talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I decided to contact them and try to get an answer or some statement from them. So on the website, you can go to the contact form, and I said, my name, and we have this podcast, and we want to cover the story again, and we have some questions. I'm not sure if you're able to answer these questions, but I'll give it a try, basically, right? And my main question is, why did you register the Moonman trademark? Right? That was the main question. And I wasn't sure I would get any response back. But I got one very fast. Just within a few hours, I got a very friendly response from their head of sales saying, like, thank you so much for contacting us and for showing an interest in this topic. And give us a few days, we'll get back to you with a more proper statement. So I did. I waited and I got it back. So let me just read that statement, and then I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure.
So here is Kaweco's statement. Thank you for reaching out, even though it would be more pleasant to talk about our passion for pens and our brand Kaweco. But we also want to keep it fair and honest with topics like this. As we grow bigger, after putting a lot of work into our designs and the brand, more and more copycats of Kaweco products want to profit from our achievements. We invested considerable amount of money, additional to the working time, to block the one-to-one copies. We tried several times to speak with the responsible persons at the known companies. From some companies, we did not even get an answer until today. Additionally, everything is very intransparent and you cannot find the address of the companies. When we finally had contact with somebody, they said in the first step that they speak no English. So we hired a Chinese-speaking person to contact them for us. No reply again. We tried so much to find a diplomatic way to solve these problems. And here comes the interesting part. Regarding Moonman T1, you are correct that this design is not a one-to-one copy.
Okay.
We haven't had a problem with it in the first place, even though it is very similar and defining design elements have been copied obviously, for example the cap. What forced us to make this decision was that we knew that Moonman is doing wholesale for D-like and therefore is helping spread the one-to-one copies. Once again, we wanted and tried to talk to Moonman several times, and they haven't made any intentions to find either a solution or even to speak to us. None of them does even care. Still, we are open to talking and finding a solution. You should also know that we are only a small company, not comparable to brands like Lamy or Faber-Castell. We have only 40 employees working here, so we can't accept that someone is destroying our business. We hope that you understand our situation. Please take care and stay safe. Head of sales.
All right.
So, at least to me, the most interesting part is that it's not about the Movement T1, it's about the wholesale. So,
okay.
Let me know what you think about this.
All right. The interesting part to me is that they didn't answer your question about the Ferris wheel press.
I mentioned it in passing, but I didn't expect to hear anything about that specifically because I'm sure there are things they can't tell us. Who knows?
Sure. Then there are several things. The admission that the T1 is not the issue was obviously interesting. And I would love to know if the original statement is from them. Which I believe it is because I think it has the signature of the president. But if it's not from them, then that would be interesting in itself, and then I would like to know who wrote that. Because in that statement, they specifically point out the Moonman T1, right?
That's how I remember it too, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it seems like they are backpedaling on what they've said in the past, which, is speculative based on whether the first statement is actually from Kaweco or not. And also the first statement seems to have Kaweco's letterhead as well. So, and yeah, I believe it is from the company because it actually has their physical stamp. So I'm reading this this thing. It has the Kaweco stamp stamped on both pages. So I want to know why they're walking back on their statement about T1. Let me just read what they specifically wrote. After our registration of the Moonman trademark and the first cancellation in Germany, a man called us and asked us why we were doing this. We have requested him to change the design of his T1 fountain pen and to stop selling the D-like products that harm the design of our Sport, Lilliput, and Supra three parts technique, or at least also change their designs. So for me, this is you know this is it's an excuse, right? It's realizing after the fact, oh, wow, you know, this is not a one-to-one copy, and we have no problem with it, but we're still gonna find some reason to not, to block the name.
There's one interesting thing about what you said here. You mentioned both the T1 being a copy, but also like this Lilliput and Supra, and that can only possibly refer to D-like and not
Yeah,
Moonman, because D-like, I agree, they have made Lilliput and Supra lookalikes. There's no
yeah.
question about that. But now you're suddenly talking about another company. So to me, it sounds like they are talking about like Moonman, the umbrella brand, or Moonman, the representative, the wholesaler, rather than like Moonman, the pen maker.
So the second thing that I think is strange is they claim that they don't have a method to speak with these folks. They don't speak English. Very difficult to find even an address. And yet they also at the same time claim to know that Moonman does OEM for D-Like,
Mm,
which, I don't know if this is true or not, right? It very well might be true. I'm curious to know where that source of information comes from.
mm.
Um, because on one hand, it seems like they're saying, oh, they're so mysterious. It's a black box, and we don't know what they're doing at all. And then on the other hand, it's like, oh, we know exactly how they're making their business, and you shouldn't support that. So I do find that a bit strange.
But there's one thing about the wholesale angle that I think is worth mentioning. So we know that at least in the US, there are two well-known retailers that sell Moonman, at least, maybe the other brands too. There could be other retailers as well. Although in both cases they have a very carefully curated selection of models, as to not offend any other pen makers, I believe. But that exists, and I remember reading. I think it was an Instagram story by another retailer. They said they were approached by a Chinese wholesaler. And this
Mm.
Chinese wholesaler brought pens from Moonman and I think it was Pen BBS and I think D-like and others. And they wanted to sell these pens. And this wholesaler had apparently said that we are the same company that is providing pens for these other retailers. So whether this is someone that's actually affiliated with Moonman or someone just doing this like outside the Moonman umbrella, I don't know, but I think this is actually happening. I think there are wholesalers that are trying to sell these various brands to Western retailers.
Yeah, and we know that there are some folks who kind of act like they are official retailers,
Mm,
but are not, right? And
mm,
and that's something that's gotten Penn BBS's Bainey kind of upset over
yes.
over the years,
Yeah.
where some people are buying from various eBay shops or
Mm,
various people who claim to be distributing these
mm.
pens, whereas she's very adamant, and I think in her profile even she says, I'm the only place where we're doing official overseas sales. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is the thing about the Chinese market right now is that, like, unless you are Chinese or
Mm,
you speak Chinese well, um, and you lived there before, right? So like,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. It's very hard to get connected or even know that you're speaking to the right person because everybody can sound so convincing, you
Yeah.
know. They're like, oh yeah, I work for XYZ company.
Right.
Yeah, but I do think that Kaweco seem to have still, I think that Kaweco st seems to have jumped the gun because I mean, I'm just not sure where that information comes from.
Mm,
And the interesting thing I think is that they were very insistent on, emphasizing how they are a very small company. They don't have resources,
right.
and they spend a lot of money doing this, blah 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 blah.
Mm,
Uh, to me, this is not something that a company that doesn't have money does, right? This is not
mm.
something that a very small company does. Um, it feels much more expensive to go hire lawyers, hire
Mm.
investigators, because if they found out all this information, right, and if it's credible, then I have to assume that they use some kind of investigator. All this, my, and I think a lot of people share this qualm is if you're going to spend this money going after Moonman, right, who they don't even have official distribution channels, right? They don't do any marketing. Kaweco does a lot of, distribution all over the world. Like, and make sure that your QA is fixed, right? Like like make sure that you deliver better pens. Make sure that you make a converter that actually works inside your own pen, right? Because their own short converter doesn't work inside their own sport pen. So it's almost like a slap in the face that you would rather develop strategies and hire lawyers and go and block somebody else before you can even make your own product, you
Mm.
know, uh, work.
But the fact that they were doing that, and also the tone of this response, make me think that they consider these Chinese pen makers an existential threat, right? We can't accept that someone is destroying our business. But my question is whether this has like materialized as a real threat in the sense that it's impacting sales, or if it's just a perceived threat. My suspicion is that it's the latter, and the reason why I'm saying that is that you can't, it's almost impossible to buy a D-like Alpha or a Wingsang 3007 today. They're all but gone from the market. They have been discontinued, and I don't think they've been discontinued because of Kaweco. I think they've been discontinued because this is just the way these companies operate. They come up with a new model, they do a few batches, and then they're done with it and off to the next model. Like they keep the best sellers, but everything else is discontinued to make room for the next great model. So I suspect that, and I could be wrong, I don't have any numbers to back this up whatsoever. I'm talking nonsense probably, but I don't think that D-like Alpha or Wingsang 3007 have significantly impacted Kaweco sales.
No, I don't think so as well. Like, um, again, they don't have distribution channels. They sell through eBay, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
Like, and and again, this goes back to what I was saying in the last time we covered this. If a company that does no marketing has somebody that speaks, like, they don't have anybody that speaks English, um, they basically they're cheaper because Kaweco Sport's not that expensive. It's what,
Mm.
$30? And maybe the D like Alpha is like what, $20?
Mm.
I guess the brass version of the Kaweco is like $80, right? But still, it's the difference is not that much.
That's true.
And if you're going to if you're losing on that, like I do feel like everything comes from the product, right? Everything comes
Mm.
from you having a good product. And the problem is that Kaweco's not put out a good product onto the market. And they're saying that they're going to develop a piston filler of their pen, which I think is very, very exciting. But the fact of the matter is that the design that they have out on the market, the um cartridge pen, I can't even say cartridge converter because the converter doesn't work, is a design from the 30s, 40s, right? It's not a new design. They've taken the vintage Kaweco design, the Kaweco Sport design, and they've removed the piston. So in my eyes, they downgraded it. They made it simpler to produce, and they stuck some smaller five nibs in it, and they put it on the market. They it's it's disingenuous to me to for them to claim that they've spent so much time on research, so much time on design when this design existed from the vintage Kaweco brand, which by the way has no connection to the modern Kaweco brand other than the design.
Yeah, I think some of the effort they talk about is the effort to trying to fight the copycats rather than the effort in like developing the products. But yeah, but that's yes, to your point really.
Yeah.
But when we covered this last time, the feedback we got was I don't understand what Kaweco is doing. I'm not sure I like what Kaweco is doing, but I like the company, I like the brand, and I still liked the product. I think that was a common feedback. So I think this is a popular product. I think it is.
Yeah.
And also for as they say, a small company, they have a very impressive distribution, and that is really one of the great strengths. Even here in Japan, not only at these big stationary stores like Itoya, but you can also go to these like Zakka lifestyle stores where you can buy the kind of stores where you have like a trendy messenger bag and a notepad and a little globe for your desk and like a letter opener. It's like an Instagram props store, right? Those kind of stores, they always have Kaweco pens, right?
Yeah.
So I think they seem to have very good reach, and they seem to have a loyal following. I suspect this is not an existential threat to them.
No, I agree with you that it's not an existential threat. And if it were, right, let's humor them for a second. If it were, if you have an existential threat to your business, what do you do about that? I think that says a lot about a company. When things are going rough, right? And you see there are competitors, there are competitors in every market. Like the fact that they didn't focus on their product it is telling to me, given that they have a huge following despite all the known QA problems that they have, right? I mean, we've all seen the hilarious nib photos from Kaweco.
What I would love to see from Kaweco, I don't even think they need to make a piston filler or all new products. What I think they would need, I would like to see them do is more store exclusives and limited editions. If you go to Kaweco's website, you find these sports in all the colors of the rainbow, but they all seem to be standard editions, which means that all the retailers can sell exactly the same pens, and there's no numbering, there's no FOMO, for the lack of a better word, right? They all have it, right? But I think all retailers love to have their own exclusives for all the obvious reasons. And retailers, they always have a reason to commemorate something. There's always an anniversary or something like that. So if they give the retailers the ability to create their own limited editions, anniversary editions over and over again, just like Sailor does, and to some extent Leonardo does, I think that is how you win, or how you compete against the Chinese companies. Because what you do have, your advantage, is your retailer networks, right? So if you double down on that by giving the retailers what they want, which is exclusives, not just one exclusive, but one exclusive for every major anniversary or whatever, I think that's how you sell more pens.
Well, the thing is, they do have that though, right? They have limited editions. So they have two types. They have one where they engrave the name of the retailer. And I know this is not a specific retailer, but they did a collaboration with Supreme, for example, that sold out really quickly.
I saw that, yeah.
So they have those kinds, and then they also have the like yearly limited editions, which they're calling collector's edition and Kaweco edition, which is the same pen that they've produced, but they printed something different on the body, which I think is not really a limited edition at all. But they do something like that.
But I think they can double down on that. I think they can go from like doing limited editions at pilot scale to doing limited editions at sailor's scale, right? You just give everyone who wants every retailer who wants a limited edition, let them do that. And clearly, again, going back at Kaweco's lineup, clearly they have the production capability to do very many different models, or at least flavors of the same model. So I think they have the capability to do that.
You know what I think they should do? I think they should copy the D-Like Alpha. I think that's a winning strategy, but that's just me. Hey, what do I know?
Yeah. So I think in summary, I'm glad that they responded. I'm glad to hear that they're not fixated on Moonman T1. I think I suspect that the threat is perceived rather than a real threat, and I don't think they're gonna go under anytime soon.
No, Kaweco's not going under. They're drama kings.
A little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I want to say as this, thank you to them for responding, and I do honestly wish them luck, just like we wish all pen makers luck.
All right. So we beat the Kaweco horse to death, so to
Again.
say, again. Last weekend I went out to Nagasaki, and I go to different places in Japan, and I always try to stop by some of these fountain pen stores that they have here. And Nagasaki is interesting because a lot of pen fans uh, might think that Nagasaki is quite a big destination because they have such a big shop in Ishimaru Bunkodo.
Mm,
And Ishimaru Bunkodo's presence is actually very big online, right? I
yeah.
think they were originally famous for their cocktail ink series, which I don't think is made by Sailor. I think it might be made by some other company, but
Mm,
they had like their own 50 shades of ink that they were famous for.
yeah.
Now, I've actually been to the store before. I've been to Nagasaki before. Akane's family, part of her family is from Nagasaki. So I went there, I think 4 years ago, way before COVID. And when I went to Ishimaru Bunkoda, I was very surprised because from the internet, you might think that Ishimaru Bunkodo is a fountain pen store, but in reality, it's very much more like your general stationery store,
Mm,
but with 5 floors. And um and the fountain pen corner was a very, very, very small corner on the third floor, second floor, something like that. And they had their 50 inks tucked away. They had their Sailor exclusives tucked away. Um, but mostly it was a wall of Pilot Kakunos that really drew my eye back then. So there wasn't that much to do
mm.
except for the pens. Um, this time I walk into Ishimaru Bunkodo. I knew exactly where the fountain pens were. I go up and it's a completely different view, Jacob. Uh, the first thing you see is a bunch of Ferris wheel press ink. Just like rows and rows of them.
Mm,
There's Tono Limbs inks, like several carousels of them, right? And they've significantly expanded their fountain pen range. Now it takes up half the floor. The other half is dedicated to things like a Traveler's Notebook or Midori MD.
mm,
Um, so for me, it was very interesting to see the change in that business. And it almost seems very obvious to me that this business seemingly is very much now driven by ink. And it's not that they didn't have their exclusive inks in the past, right? But now I feel like Tono Limbs in particular have brought it to a whole new level.
mm,
And yeah, I did think that that was interesting because it also helped them expand their fountain pen range. They've, you know, gotten a brand new like furniture to display and showcase all of these fountain pens that they have. They have their Makia stuff out, they have their chicken stuff out. Interestingly, there wasn't a lot of glass pens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was one cabinet of glass pens, but that was it. It was not full of, unique boutique makers. But it was actually mostly fountain pen driven. And I'm very pleasantly surprised because a shop like Ishmael, most of their sales still comes from a local market, right? People who are out in Kyushu, maybe go down to Ishmael Bunkodo. Obviously, people from Tokyo, we're not flying out to Ishmael every day, but I think people in the western or southwestern part really depend on Ishmael Bunkodo for their fix.
Right.
So I'm curious to as to, what you think about this expansion of fountain pens, especially these like gotochi inks, and also how you think inks are helping the revive in a way the scene. I know we've talked about this slightly in a different angle before, but very curious to know what you think about that.
I recall hearing or reading that Ishimura was struggling at one point. I'm not sure when it was. It may have been during the start of the pandemic. So maybe this is part of their sort of pivot to appeal to a new type of customers. I remember with the first ink I got from Ishimura Bunkuro was that Gunkanjima. It was one of those
Yep.
Gotoji inks, which is it's really nice
Yep.
ink, by the way. It's an unusual gray, orangey ink. We have talked a lot about Toner and Limbs and how usually it's not the big retailers. It's very like small like shops here and there that jump on the Toner and Limbs bandwagon and do various collaborations. You don't see the Itoyas and Marusens. But so Ishimura is a bit of an outlier in that sense because they are a bit bigger than your Shokiros and Moe and. But these are not Gotoji inks in a sense,
No.
right?
Yeah.
You said that these are that they're mostly selling fountain pens, not so many glass pens. But I associate Tone and Dames mostly with inks for glass pens nowadays, and I just look at some Instagram posts from Ishimura Bunkudo, and it looks like there's a lot of glitter and experimental stuff. So did they market these as inks for fountain pens?
So, what they have is they have you go up into the sales area. They have a huge table. The first thing you see is Ferris wheel press, and
Mm,
then you see a bunch of tonal limb, and then sandwiched between is some of their Nagasaki BK uh, sailor inks,
mm,
and then in front of that you have the Yamamoto paper sampler, and yeah, it says fountain pen on the Yamamoto paper sampler,
mm.
um, but for those I think they had that new sailor dip pen. I think we
Right, right.
talked about that on the podcast already, but they had that little dip pen out there. Other than that, yeah, mostly fountain pens they have in their inventory. Again, there was a small selection of glass pens, but
Mm,
I'm looking at their Instagram as well, and you can see a lot of like non-fountain pen products.
mm,
You see this small smattering sometimes of glass pens, but what I see mostly is their appeal to inks
mm.
and these like bright colors.
Yeah.
And then there's also, of course, the fountain pens. They had actually an interesting selection of Bei-Nu, which is not something that we see
Mm.
super often here.
But I think what I'm sure the retailers like about working with Toner and Limbs is this, as we talked about many times
Small
before,
lots.
so small lot. I mean, let's say you like Maruzen's ink. You go there and you buy your Eternal Blue and Hatobanezu and whatever, and that's it. You can go back like 100 times during 1 year, and you're not gonna find any more inks. If you go to Okamotoya, where they sell Toner Limbs ink, like every week you're gonna have a new ink. Like, so if you're a retailer, right, and you want people to come back to your store, not just go there like once a year, what you want is to be able to have new products, right? And that's why Toner Limbs is probably so attractive to retailers.
What's interesting though is that I don't see tonal limbs discontinuing products because this leads to a huge buildup of inventory that they wouldn't necessarily be able to get rid of.
Well, it depends on the nature of their manufacturing. Maybe this is like just in time that things aren't really discontinued. It's just that they don't. Someone asks for a batch and they produce a batch, right? It just exists on paper.
Yeah, but for the retailer, they wouldn't be able to continue buying like, all these batches if there's one batch that they don't sell, they're having that on their inventory forever.
Mm,
So that's what I see with like lots of SKUs. But anyways, it's interesting that they have a lot more lines. Um, and they're still keeping that cocktail ink series that they have. They still have that ink library or ink book. But yeah, it's much bigger now. I'm sending you a link on our chat to a post where you can see their new space. And if you can see this fixture, right? This is
Mm.
a kind of like a rectangular table. The entire thing is fountain pens.
That looks like Marsden or Itoya
Yeah.
or Shosaikan. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is actually very much more than more Amarzen and a less an Okamoto, yeah.
Yeah, well, because Okamoto has just mostly glass pens, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that
Yeah,
many
for
fountain
sure.
pens, yeah.
For sure. I went to a different store as well, which might be interesting or might be more known to the Western audience than the local audience, actually, which is the Mannenhitsu Byoin. And the Mannenhitsu Byoin is interesting to Western audience is because um this is actually featured in a
But
in several YouTube videos.
yes.
One of them is called the Masters of the Fountain Pen. Have you seen this video before?
Yeah, sure. Many times, yeah.
Yeah. It's it's so funny because these guys are I swear, they're so small. They're so small. Um, this YouTube video has 1.2 million views, right? So it's a big video. These guys are in the arcade, same arcade as Ishimar actually. Very, very, very small. Staffed by three people. I think it must be the owner, and the owner's family. And I've been there twice. I've not seen a single person walk in. And we visited our local friends as well, and they said, "Oh well, I didn't even know the store was here. I've never been inside of here." But I'm curious because I think there is quite a nice role that these smaller traditional retailers
Mm.
contribute to the scene. Because what I see is that folks who really really have been using fountain pens for a long time, they probably don't go to Ishimaru Bunkodo anymore, right? They probably go to this place because the master who owns the shop, probably does like some adjustments, some
Mm.
discussion, some talking about fountain pens on an enthusiast level that Ishmael probably couldn't do. And they even have their own exclusive King of Pen. They have a version of the Briar that's exclusive to them.
That's more surprising, but maybe that's some childhood friend or something like that relation with
Yeah,
this
but
someone sailor.
it actually looks really, really nice. And they have all the new releases from Pilot as well. So I mean, I can't imagine them being able to sell out their inventory. But what do you? Because you go up to Tohoku sometimes as well, right? You must have seen these shops.
I think they have a small number of very loyal customers. They don't come every day or even every week, but when they come, they will spend money, and that's enough to sustain the business. And I'm sure some of the shops actually don't have huge running costs. So I think some of the owners are like semi-retired. It blurs the line between work and hobby at one point.
Yeah, and they're not really bothered with selling you anything either.
Mm.
We were in the store for like 30 minutes. They didn't talk to us. They're like, yeah, just look around, whatever.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was my trip out to Nagasaki. Um, Next thing on the list we have is it just says vintage pens.
So a few weeks ago, I bought I found one of those Banet pens on America. We talked about Banet before, right? It's this
Right.
group of pen makers, and they made some of the most sought after pens of a certain era. And most of the Banet pens you see nowadays on Yahoo auctions and so on, they are these so-called balance style pens, which are like cigar shapes. They
Yeah.
from slim to like ridiculously fat pens, but they're almost all balance style pens. But the one I found was a so-called Onoto style pen, which is a diplomatic way of saying that it's basically a Onoto Model N replica, except for the filling system. As in, it's not a self-filler, it's a Japanese Inkidome, but it looks exactly like the old Onoto Model N that was produced from like 1905 to 1920, I think. So I found this Banei pen for a very good price, and I bought it. And as usual with all of these Inkidome eyedroppers, it was leaking. They're always leaking. That's just how it is. So normally, or in the past, when I bought these Inkidome eyedroppers and they were leaking, I haven't been motivated to repair them. I just given them away or just sold them. But this one, because it's a bit of unusual shape and the nib is just fantastic, I was motivated for the first time to repair it. So I contacted Kanesaki-san.
Oh, you contacted Kanesaki-san.
Yes.
Okay.
So I contacted him and said, I got this pen. I sent a photo of it. I think the cork seal is leaking, and what would it cost to repair that? So before I say what he replied, what do you think his price would be?
Well, it depends on whether he finds it interesting, I think. But I don't know. $100, $200?
So he said if he just needs to replace the seal, or what he called a pakkin kokan, then it's 5,000 yen.
All right.
If he also needs to replace the rod, then it's another 3,000 yen. And there was one more common type of repair that was 2,000 yen. So all in all, somewhere between 5 and 10,000 yen. So basically like for $40 to $80, depending on the condition of the pen. So I thought, okay, that sounds, that's more reasonable than I expected. So I said, okay, how do we do this? Should I just send it to you? And he replied, said, yes, send it to me. It will take about a month or so. So I did. I sent it to him, and the next day he got it, and he'd already replied. I said, yeah, I got your pen. I did a first inspection, like a tinken, and I think all I need to do is replace the packing. So about 5,000 yen. Okay, I said, it's okay. That sounds great. Cheaper than expected, so I'll wait. I waited, and the next day he replied again and said, yeah, I'm done. Wait, what? You said 1 month. No, it was not 1 month. Apparently he had a bunch of other pens that needed the same type of repair, so he did them all in one batch. So the next day he was done, and the total cost would be, including return, shipping, and tax, about 6,000 yen. And of course I had to pay via Furikomi because, this is Japan. So I paid with Furikomi, and he immediately shipped it back, and I already have it back. And yes, I for 6,000 yen, I got the pen repaired, and it's not leaking, and much cheaper than I had expected. So I don't think this will be the last time I'm sending Kanesaki-san a leaky eyedropper.
Yeah, those seem to be very reasonable prices, and like you could wait for a Wagner, but who knows how long those take, right? Seems very reasonable.
One more thing I will say is that this pen, like all of these vintage eyedroppers with ebonite feeds, it's a wet writer. It's a very, very wet writer. So I was thinking about what ink to use with it, and I think I finally found the ideal ink for this pen. Tag Hisoku.
Why is that?
Because it's almost too dry for any other pen I have, but it's perfect fit for this pen.
So I actually held this pen in my hands, didn't I?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
This is a very unique shape that is almost like the Onoto shapes, but taken to the next level, right?
No, I would say it's almost an exact replica of the so-called Onoto Model N. I've been looking online, and the Model N looks exactly like this. The only difference is that Onoto is, of course, a self-filler. That was, the defining feature of Onotos. While the Japanese eyedropper is kind of a simplification of that filling system, in that you have the shut-off valve, but it's not a self-filler.
Right, but the section is different, right?
No, the section is the same too.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, I found this really funny old ad from Onoto, where you have like two military servicemen on the front line, and they are standing there comparing their pens, and one guy has a pen and like a dropper, and he looks very sad, and the other guy has an Onoto pen and looks very smug, and tells the other guy, why didn't you tell your wife to send you an Onoto pen? You don't want to bring a dropper to the battlefield, or something like that.
Well, they must be very bored out in the trenches.
Yes, they're swatching in the trenches.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And you wrote a blog post about this pen, right?
I haven't written it yet, but I've done some research. I'm planning to do that. I also found some more information about this pen on Eurobox website. Apparently, it was at one point sold at Amazon. So I have some notes and I'll probably do a blog post.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You should bring it to Marathon and ask about that there. I'm sure they won't know anything.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Some kind of Sailor releases. Two releases here today. The first one I want to talk about is the Nagasawa Kobe Airport Limited Edition. Have you seen this pen?
Not until you put the link there. I thought it was one of those Ishimura pens at first because they look kind of the same with this like matte aluminum
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, a pen friend sent me a link, and we were discussing because in the US they just got this um Every Rose Has Its Thorn pen, which by the way, is super long, terrible name. And we were talking about why can't Sailor USA get more interesting stuff? Because they also did the King of Pen, Wicked Witch of the West, which, I'm sure is a very nice pen, but I feel like nobody asked for a King of Pen version.
Mm.
Um, and then this friend sent me this Kobe Airport limited edition, and they say, "All right, I guess Japan gets some lame ones too." So this is what? A blue cap and white body pen. It seems almost utterly unremarkable, except for the nib. And I feel like this is kind of a rare dud from Nagasawa because Nagasawa's limited editions usually they're very on point, right? They're always the flat tops, always very popular. This pen in particular, I feel like is one that is getting a lot less attention than some of their other stuff. You think this is a rare dud from Nagasawa?
To be honest, I don't pay nearly as much attention to Sailor limited editions as you do. It's becoming like Tono Limbs Inc. There's like a new one every week, and I can't keep up. So I didn't really notice this one before. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I would pick a pen from Hachimonja or Pento Note or Kingdom Note before this one for sure.
The I mean, you did recommend Kaweco to do these weekly releases though.
That's true. That's true. But that is from a producer perspective, not a
All right.
consumer perspective. As a consumer, I don't want any more limited editions.
Yeah. So, so just a quick, non-scientific comparison. Their Chaska Green limited edition, which they post on 12th of November, had 550 likes. This airport one, 268. But when they posted the nib, it was much more popular, 411. And I have to say the nib is kind of cool.
Mm.
The pen is just not it. But you know what pen is it? Is the new Shishikura pen.
The owl, right?
They've sent the postcards with the picture of this pen. And when the Marzen fair was first announced, they had these like this blacked out pen, right? It was kind of if
Mm.
you've ever watched Detective Conan, it's like when they show the bad guys, but they don't want to show their faces. It's got this like blacked out character. Um, so they had this blacked out pen. Now we finally see what it is, and it's this. I believe it's like a translucent red with pink finials and what they claim to be a gray body. And I think that the thing that's really the killer is this owl on the nib, which does look really nice.
The moment I got the flyer from Marzen, or the postcard from Marzen, I put it on my Instagram story, and the first one to respond was Quay, and she said, not enough glitter.
Yeah, this is a bit of a departure from I think their previous Shishikuras. I actually still think it is very, very nice, and I do feel like we won't really know what it's like until we see it in person.
Yeah,
But
if you look at the photo up close, it looks like there's some subtle glitter in the cap
yeah,
at least. Yeah,
but what Shishikura was known for was the huge chunky glitters, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and that doesn't seem to be present here. But I still think it is pretty nice.
Yeah, it definitely looks better than the egg and cognac pen. Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's not for me. But mostly because of the metal section. But I think the color
Yeah.
combination works well, and the finials they aren't like. I mean, they said pink, but they're not like shocking pink. They're like salmon pink, right? I think that the color combination works very well.
Yeah, yeah. And we always uh expect Shishikura to churn out bangers.
Yeah.
So those are the two new releases that I think, we're going to see in the upcoming few weeks. Um, and then we have two more topics here. One just says ink follow-up.
In the last episode, we talked about Iroshizuku inks and how they are alkaline, and we theorized that that might be why you may not want to mix them with other inks, either intentionally or accidentally by not, cleaning the pen thoroughly, right? I wanted to see just how alkaline they were, so I looked at old issues of Shumino Bungobaku. So we talked a lot about Shumino Bungobaku, right? Most
Yep.
of the issues of Shumino Bungobaku are basically product catalogs and Bechori interviews, but every once in a while they do this really thorough tests, mostly of paper or ink. And in I think it was in issue 47 or 37, they did this. They measured the pH of a number of different inks. So and as we said, Pilot's Iroshizuku inks are indeed alkaline. They all have a pH around like between 9 and 10. But the thing is, that's true for Sailor inks as well. So for example, like Sailor's Soten and Pilot's Compake, they have basically the same pH. Sailor's Yamadori and Pilot's Kujaku, they have basically the same pH. So there's nothing really stand out about a Pilot, or other than maybe the consistency. So I thought that was interesting. But also, if you look at the Western pen makers, Pelikan is all over the place. They have everywhere from like 2 to 10. So there's no real consistency. It all depends on the color. Meanwhile, Faber-Castell, most of the inks are kind of neutral, around like 6 or 7. And Mont Blanc is somewhere between like 3 and 6. The most interesting ones I thought were Platinum. So Platinum's Iron Gold inks, they have a pH of between 1.3 and 1.1.
Oh, that's very acidic.
That's very acidic. Yeah. So I know I would be a lot more concerned about using those in my pens than any Iroshizuku ink.
I also think like, pH is maybe one factor. I'm still not convinced pH determines all that rather
Mm.
than the chemicals. Because have you done a lot of ink mixing, Jacob?
Uh, I have done ink mixing, but I usually do it the safe way. I stick within a brand.
Yeah, I mixed what is it? Iroshizuku with another ink before. And
Mm.
what happened is that the ink couldn't keep itself together in a way. It just spread all over the place. All over, it was like feathering. It couldn't keep its consistency. And I'm not
Mm.
convinced that that's because of the pH.
I agree. There's probably more to it. We should really try to find some. Maybe we should get Gary on the podcast.
Didn't you have some kind of study about like surface tension and all that stuff as well?
Yeah, that was in another issue of Shumino Bungobaku. They have done very extensive tests about that, and what you can see is that what we often talk about as like wetness translates pretty much not to viscosity but surface tension. So if you look at this, the scale of surface tension, that's pretty much the same scale as what we normally talk about as wetness. So like some of the Pilot inks, the JR Barn inks, they are on one end of the spectrum, while Pelikan inks, for example, are on the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said about how these chemicals react to each other.
Mm.
Um, and there's probably a little bit more to that as well. But yeah, it's interesting to see that, we often associate Pilot with the alkaline inks, but you know, same is had for others. I
Exactly.
would actually argue that if we're looking at this pH thing, it's
Mm.
much more worrisome if a brand is all over the place
Yeah.
because you can expect what to get.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. The final thing on this is a thing that I haven't shared with you specifically yet. And I don't think you follow this account, so I don't think you've seen this. So I've just sent to you a picture. Now this is a screenshot of an Instagram story. Are you able to see that?
Yes, yes, yes.
So what we're looking at right now is a story from this calligraphy based or I don't know if it's calligraphy based account. But it's this shop that focuses a lot on calligraphy supplies. They have a lot of calligraphy workshops and they have some fountain pen stuff as well. But if you look at the page itself, it's very much geared towards more traditional calligraphy with some fountain pens.
Hmm.
And in their story, which I believe, yes, is still up, they have this these two new products. It says um, lessons to learn about fountain pens and how to adjust fountain pens by Lichtope.
Hmm.
And then you have these slots. You can start to apply for these slots. And they have two items. I'm going to start with the first one, or the bottom one. It says a telephone reception with Lichtope is free, but I guess there are limited slots
Hmm.
on that. And then there's a personal concierge, Lichtope, fountain pen, and basic knowledge and personal concierge. And this costs 3,300 yen, including tax.
I still don't understand what this is.
I mean, I don't really know either. I don't know what is a fountain pen concierge. Do you?
I have no idea. Is this like some like personal shopping thing or like? No, I don't know. This is a mystery to me.
So what I suspect, and I opened the page up now, you have a nice photo of Tomoko and of her cleaning out a pen. I'm gonna read it. It says, this is a special lesson. I'm just gonna share you the link so you can see it as well. A special lesson with Suzuki Tomoko about the basics of fountain pens and how to find the right fountain pen for you. So it's teaching you how to hold the fountain pen based on whether you write from left to right or from top to bottom. The basic shapes of tipping, uh, about nib sizes, the I guess interactions or the compatibility with paper, teaching you how to use cartridges, converters, pistons, eyedroppers, lever fillers, etc., and also teaching you how to clean out inks. So it says personal concierge, but it's actually a group lesson of six. And um yeah, I guess it's just a group study on how to use fountain pens.
I've seen that before. Usually at the event, they usually have like a table where someone like from like Pilot or wherever is teaching the basics of how to use a fountain pen, how
Right,
to take apart a
right.
fountain pen. Maybe this is meant to be like an upscale version of that.
But the pilot ones are free, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now this is 3,300 yen. This is more expensive than one of those Mori event entry tickets.
I remember at like tips, for example, when they have these lessons. At least you
You got a
sometimes
pen.
you pay, but you get a pen. Do you get something here?
Doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like it.
Hmm.
I actually think this is kind of smart from Lichtope because a lot of this information you could find on the internet, right? It's free.
Hmm.
But there's that like added layer of service where you have somebody who's actually explaining it to you
Hmm.
and holding your hand through that. I think it's a smart way for her to expand her business like this. I actually have no problems with this whatsoever. I do think that this is kind of a service that now we see a lot of new people enter into the fountain pen world, especially people that, let's say, have not traditionally been part of the fountain pen world. It is, I think, in some ways intimidating for these younger, more female audience to approach a group like Wagner, which is, very much older male audience, and to get that information, right? So I
It's
think
intimidating
what
for everyone, including us.
yeah, that's right. I waited like a year before I could muster up the courage to go to a Wagner.
Yeah.
But but I think it's really smart that she's doing this. She's kind of selling fountain pens as a service, right? Yeah, everything as a service now.
Yeah, I mean, she's the bridge, the translator between like the worlds of Mori and Bechuri, right?
Yeah, that's right, that's right. And I'm wondering, like, is this something that's gonna be a thing in the future? Because I actually thought about this. I thought about doing this myself, but for nib grinding, I think that would be a pretty interesting thing to do. But this, I think it's exciting that she's actively kind of promoting, although th there's a little cost associated with that. I'm hoping that it succeeds for her.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes.
There seem to be a lot of these people now who get into inks via ink and calligraphy and dip pens, and then they start to wonder about fountain pens. It looks interesting, but they seem difficult to use. So how do I get started with fountain pens? And that's where Tomoko comes in. Yeah.
I think my only worry with this is maybe some misinformation, particularly to do with like flex pens. Because as we've discussed before, flex pen, like knowledge about flex pens is not great in Japan. And the various definitions are also slightly different, right? So
It's true.
I'm a bit worried about that. But other than that, yeah, I hope she does well. I hope that's a great success.
Yeah, me too. Me too. This is a good idea.
Yep. New product category, right? FAS, fountain pens as a service.
Exactly. That's good.
All right. I think that's all I've got.
Same here.
All right. This has been the episode. My name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram and TikTok at Tokyo Station Pens, and on Twitter at Tokyo Station MNH.
And my name is Jacob. I'm Fudefan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at fudefan.com.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.